You can go ahead.
Okay. All right, guys. Hi. Welcome to Breaking Down Your Syllabus. This is going to be an introduction to using your course syllabi in order to set yourself up for success at the beginning of the semester. And this is a partnership between the Academic Success Center, or ASC for short, and the NC State University Libraries. So we're really excited to be here with you guys. It's kind of a great time to be talking about this right now because the first day of classes was on Monday, so everybody's getting their course syllabi in order, getting organized, and ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. So first off, wanted to introduce your presenters so you know who you're kind of meeting with today. So I'm going to let Alex go first.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Alex Valencia. I am a student success librarian here at NC State. So I do a lot of undergraduate programming. We just did Welcome Week for all the new Spring Connect students and all the students just coming back over the semester break. And just hoping you all a good semester, wishing that you all have health and do good during your classes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and my name is Sarah Stokely. I serve as the Supplemental Instruction, or SI coordinator for the Academic Success Center. I also oversee our group tutoring programs and teach a section of our tutor training course. So do a lot of work with just kind of meeting students this week, which is great. Got to see a lot of you in different chemistry classes if you're taking a Chem 100 or 200 level Chem class. And just a little bit about me, I actually graduated from NC State, so I've been there where you guys are with just kind of beginning the semester and the excitement and nervousness that can come with that. So excited to be talking with you about how to use your syllabi to help get you organized and hopefully help you stay organized throughout the semester.
And the Academic Success Center is now in the libraries, right, after last semester.
Yeah, absolutely. We are super excited. We're in what's still kind of a new space. We're located on the second floor of D.H. Hill Junior Library, so right on main campus. If you haven't had a chance to check out the space yet, would highly recommend. We've got lots of whiteboard tables for study spaces, and then starting next week, we've actually got our tutoring programs gearing up. So Tuesday, right after we come back from the 3-day weekend, you can start scheduling appointments for math, chemistry, physics, and select other courses. You're going to hear us talk a little bit more about that throughout today's presentation. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to either put those in the chat or contact us, either the ASC through our email address or the libraries. So we're here to answer questions for you guys.
Yeah, feel free to throw any questions in the chat. We have it open, so we'll be able to get to them. And I just want to encourage all the students to, it's so hard right now. Some classes are on Zoom.
Yes.
Some classes are in person. They might be in person for 2 weeks and then go on Zoom for a month and then come back. We understand that there's so much going on. You might have to quarantine for a while. So just take advantage of the resources you have here at the library with the new ASC. If you don't know where it is, don't worry. Just come to the Ask Us desk. We'll point you in the right direction. And yeah, just come by and stop by, check out the resources. We have a bunch of tech to lend, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But definitely highly recommend just at least coming by to check it out so you know where it's at. When midterms come around, when finals come around, that first paper is coming up. So, yeah, just come by and stop by anytime.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so the way that this is going to work is we actually have a syllabus from last semester. So I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Martin, who works in the chemistry department. He was kind enough to let me borrow his Chem 101 syllabus from last fall. So we're going to go through this and actually highlight some different things, things that you, some of it might be familiar to what you already kind of highlight when you're going through your syllabi for your different courses. Some of it might be a little bit new. So I encourage you to kind of look through these different things. The other great thing about study habits is that they're very fluid. So you might try one thing for one class and it works for that class. You can be successful with that particular skill, but you might need to switch it up a little bit for a different class that you're taking. So I encourage you to try some of these different methods and see what works best for you with your coursework. So when you're looking at your syllabi, one other thing I wanted to mention with this, syllabi format should be pretty uniform between your different courses, but there might be some variation as different instructors kind of put their own spin on things. So just keep that in mind. We're going to be looking specifically through this syllabus, but there might be a few format changes, so just kind of be aware of that. So to start off, you, of course, have your information about where your course is going to be meeting, whether that is in person or potentially virtually. And as Alex mentioned, that could be varying this semester, so definitely make sure that you are keeping a regular eye on your email so that you can keep an eye out for that information. We're all kind of taking it day by day with these different things, so be sure that you are kind of keeping an eye on your email so that you can watch for that communication from your instructors. If you have an instructor that's teaching multiple sections of the same course, they might be using the same syllabus for both sections, or they could have different ones, so that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, and then next I highlighted your instructor's email address. So this is something that if you have not saved it or don't have it written down somewhere, would highly, highly, highly recommend that you make sure you've got access to that so that you can access it in case you need to contact him about having to quarantine, giving him a heads up on if you have anything that might be impacting your ability to complete homework assignments on time, if you're having to miss an exam, different things like that. So make sure you know your instructor's email or other contact information. The other important piece here is that Dr. Martin actually has some information about his office hours, usually right up at the top. And I would say a lot of instructors usually post information about their office hours right up at the top. So for our example here, Dr. Martin is actually was doing virtual office hours last semester, and that's something that you'll want to be sure you check with your instructor. So the office hours typically are set to be the same days each week, and they could be virtual or in person. And you're going to want to make sure that you have that information handy so that you can put that in your schedule, or be able to reach out to your instructor if for some reason maybe those office hours don't work within your schedule. Maybe you've got other classes that conflict with that time. Reach out to your instructor about scheduling an appointment if you need to. And office hours are one of the most underutilized resources here at NC State. So I would block those off in your calendar. You can plan on going if you have specific questions, or sometimes if instructors are letting multiple students in at once, that gives you a chance to hear other students' questions too. So office hours are a great resource for you to utilize if you feel like you're kind of falling behind in class or just want some additional one-on-one instruction about a particular topic that you're going through in class that week. And then most instructors will also include some information about their preferred communication methods. So for example, with this syllabus, we are communicating with Dr. Martin mainly through email. That is his preferred method of communication. And then this is also a tip that even if your instructor has not mentioned this, I would highly include your course section in your subject line. That can be really beneficial. Your instructors could be teaching several different classes, and they could be teaching several different sections of those classes. So it's helpful for them if you'll put that information there so that they can get an idea of what course that you are in, because in some of your classes, they are pretty big, and there are lots of students there, so they may not quite remember which section you are attending. So I would encourage you to include that in your subject line. And then Dr. Martin includes an important note here in this section about only contacting him via email for administrative issues. So if there are any specific questions about content, whether it's over homework or over notes, he has specific instructions on how to access that or access help for that. So that's something to pay attention to when you're looking through your syllabus.
And I just want to reiterate what you were saying about the importance and underutilization of office hours.
Yes.
It can seem intimidating to go talk to your professor one-on-one, especially in your first and second year, but they're not as scary as you might think.
No.
They might be intense during class because they have to get 100 students through Chem 101 in an hour and a half, and that's really difficult. They have their learning objectives. Every class has an objective that they're trying to meet, but their office hours, especially if there's no one else in there, they're oftentimes a lot more welcoming and they just have a lot more time to answer your individual questions. It's also a great way to put your face to your name on your assignments, because they just can't simply know 700 students by name, by face. So it's a really great way to get like a personal relationship. And you never know, you might need these personal relationships for a recommendation later, to apply for grad school. They might help you with that process. So there's so many different things aside from your individual class that you could benefit from going in and really building a relationship with these professors. So I just want to reiterate that and encourage you, even if your professor has all the scary reviews on Rate My Professor, just go try to talk to them, because you never know, and that's their time that they've set aside. They're going to be there no matter what. It's not, you're not a burden if you come in. They set those hours aside, and that's their hours to meet with their students. So just encourage all of you to use that, even if it's not really for a big question, but just to check in and just get to know your professors a little bit. It goes a long, long way. It's something I wish I knew when I was an undergrad, for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned what I was going to say too, with a great way to get to know your instructors. So if you're interested in doing like undergraduate research, that's a great way just to ask instructors about the work that they're doing, or just connected with work that's going on in the different field. I know for me personally, I did undergraduate research when I was a sophomore, and that's how I got connected, was getting to know an instructor, and really thoroughly enjoyed my lab experience. And that wouldn't have happened if I had not gotten to know my instructor. So cannot recommend that enough. So thanks for mentioning that, Alex.
Yeah.
All right. So this has a little bit of information. So one thing you'll notice with your syllabi is that they can be long documents. And there's a lot of really good information in there. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to kind of sift out the important information that you want to make sure that you are very familiar with. And the great thing is that the syllabus is typically posted on your course Moodle site. So if you ever forget a piece of information or want to go back and reference it, it's posted there for you guys. So you can go back and review that information. So here on this page, we've got a little information and kind of what I like to call some housekeeping things with the course. So with each course that you take at NC State, there are going to be certain prerequisites. So for instance, with Chem 101, Dr. Martin is clear that you either took the placement exam, which is something you would have done maybe before you even stepped on campus, or right soon after you stepped on campus, and that you've had some math or pre-calc level, so something that you might have taken in high school or in your first semester or two here at State. And I really like Dr. Martin's information here about you are expected to know some chemistry. So there are going to be some topics that he covers during the first couple of weeks in Chem 101, or that he covered in the fall semester, that he expected students to already know. So that information is really important for you to be familiar with, so that if that's something that you maybe need a little bit of extra help with, you can either plan on going to an office hours or making an appointment with your instructor to get some help with that, to kind of get some reinforcement, or utilize several of the other resources that we have available here at NC State. I actually, visiting one of the classrooms this week, doing SI intros, got to hear an instructor share that one of the things that he absolutely loved about being able to work and teach at NC State is the amount of resources that we have here available at NC State. So if you're not quite sure what's available, I highly encourage you just to start asking questions. You can do your own research by looking up different websites, or stop by the libraries, go to the Ask Us desk, or come to the Academic Success Center front desk. We would love to help you be able to navigate those different things. And then additionally, we have information about important dates for the class, so that is something you want to be familiar with. These would also be great questions if you're not quite sure, what does it mean by census day, or what does it mean by drop day? Those are great questions to follow up with your advisor. And the Academic Success Center actually does have drop-in advising hours. The specific hours for each day are posted on our website, so I'd encourage you to check out that information. Yep, so I highlighted those. And of course, those were fall dates, so just make sure that you're keeping in mind as you're looking through your own syllabi, those are going to be for this semester in the spring.
Yeah, those dates, super important for your GPA, super important for your financial aid. So just always give those a check at the beginning of the semester, just in case. You never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. All right, and then this piece of information is newer for syllabi. So each instructor has information about how their course may potentially be adapted based on situation with COVID. So I do just include this in here so that you are aware what information you have access to. And so we have our Protect the Pack website, which has all of the updated information from the university. So if you have any specific questions, would highly encourage you to check out that website, as well as community standards related to COVID-19 and what you should expect for what that means when you are actually participating in class or meeting with groups in the libraries or doing your own individual studying too. All right. So let's get into maybe one of the not so fun topics, but required materials. So for each class, you might have a required textbook or way that you are accessing homework. With our example here with Chem 101, we're specifically looking at an online textbook and homework. So this was through WebAssign. So Dr. Martin includes information here about how to access that WebAssign. And additionally, what are some important dates to know with that? So when this became available, and then also when you might when your free trial might end for a particular software. Any class key information is going to be beneficial, so you can make sure that you are enrolled in your specific class section for your homework, so you're accessing the right assignments. And then making sure that you're staying in the same section too. So again, important to make sure you're paying attention to the distinction if you have an instructor that is teaching multiple sections here, because there are two different class keys for section 4 and section 5 in this example.
Yeah, and so we just want to remind everybody that the library, we buy and lend all required textbooks. We get a list from the professors at the beginning of the semester. We order the books, and we have them on reserve at the Ask Us desk. You just come up, ask for the book. If it's not already checked out, then you can have it for 2 hours. You can scan some of the chapters that you need, send them to yourself as a PDF, send it to your email. The homework online is a little tricky because you have to have the class key. But when it comes to textbooks and ebooks, we have access to a lot of ebooks as well. You can get those on our website, lib.ncsu.edu. You can find out what versions of the book we have in that same spot. There's a search bar on our homepage. If you just search the all, you can search and it'll find books and media for that class. A great thing that some students don't know is we'll have older generations of books, 4th edition, 5th edition if you're on the 6th. And while it might be a little bit different, you can at least get some source material. And you can check out those books for longer, sometimes 1 month, sometimes 2 months. So you could even get it for the whole semester if you renew it and nobody else is asking for it. And then you have some other source material that you can reference, stuff that you don't have to worry about turning it in 2 hours, and you can take it home. But yeah, 2 hours is a really good amount of time to be able to get the chapter that you need, especially in the beginning of the semester when you might not have had time to have the book shipped to yourself. Absolutely. You might not have had time to go to the bookstore yet. You can at least have it for that first couple homework assignments, because the last thing you want to do is fall behind in the first couple sessions.
Absolutely.
You want to be a little bit ahead, so that way you can catch up later if you need to.
Yeah. If I'm looking for the scanner, where would I go to find that?
Yeah, definitely. So right next to the Ask Us desk, we have like a print and copy room, and there's also some in the learning labs as well on that first floor. Okay. Kind of out by the DVD collection, you'll find some book scanners that's scattered around in there as well. And they're really easy. They're the overhead, so you don't have to flip the book over, turn a page, flip it over again. It just scans, and then you flip the page and scans again, and it sends it to you via email. It's super nice. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. You remember back in the day when you'd have to photocopy, fold it down, hope there was no light seeping through. You don't have to do any of that. We have really great, and you can even put them onto a USB drive as well, and then you just have what you need.
Cool. Yeah. And do you have to have your Unity ID for that, or just work the scanner?
You have to have your Unity. It's good to bring your ID. If not, you can bring your driver's license and give us your ID number. But we prefer your NC State ID. That way we can just scan it, and then you can check out the book, and then you can use the scanners. If you have the book already, you can just use the scanners. You don't need to sign in with your name. You might need to if you're emailing it to yourself. But,
gotcha. Okay, cool. good info. And then Alex mentioned older editions of the books. Sometimes your instructors might actually include those older editions, or what are some good ones to be looking at in the syllabus too. So that's something you can keep in mind when looking at that information. And then next on our required materials, this is Top Hat. So for folks that are maybe first years, second years, maybe some transfer students, Top Hat is kind of like an online clicker. It's kind of like an app that you can use on your phone as a clicker. And in this case, with Chem 101, that was the way that they track attendance. Other courses may have different methods, so that information will be posted on your syllabus. But this also has important course codes for you to make sure that you're getting enrolled into the right section. And your instructor probably went through this information on the first day of class, but if that's a little fuzzy now, since we're at the end of the week, your syllabus has a good review of that, so I'd encourage you to check that out. And then lastly, with internet access, so especially with potentially having to attend classes virtually, if you're needing to attend like a live stream option, or if you're having to just look at other resources, so maybe there are some additional notes or PowerPoint slides, outlines, different videos or worksheets, you want to make sure that you've got consistent internet in order to be able to access those different resources. And so that could be in your residence halls, or it could even be in the library.
Yeah, we have hotspots at the Ask Us desk if you need internet in a pinch, especially now if you might be at home, you might be in more rural areas where it's hard to get a solid internet connection. No worries, just come by. You can email Tech Lending and we'll figure it out, and we'll help you get some internet for sure. Also, we're going to talk more about hours later, but the library has really good internet, and we're open 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then we're going to open 7 days a week, 24 hours during finals time at the end of the semester. So there's plenty of different options. It can be stressful, can be difficult, but we can help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when, what happened to it?
Let's see. We are having a technical difficulty, but we will figure this out. Is it?
Hang on. 1 second.
But we hope you all are having a great first week of the semester. Don't forget to stop by the libraries. The Academic Success Center is open. They're going to start tutoring sessions after the holiday. So as soon as Tuesday, you can start coming in and getting help. There's going to be a lot going on this semester, so it's always good to stay on top of what is going on. And we wish you the best. Here we go. We are back. Yes. Thank you for that. I guess we just got to move it around every once in a while.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So next I did include this. So one of the reasons that I reached out to Dr. Martin about using his syllabus for the course is that he actually includes a statement of inclusivity, which I really liked. And some other instructors are probably including similar information. And the really cool thing about this is that there are different resources that are posted here, even outside of the libraries or Academic Success Center. And that's our OIED, or Office for Institutional Equity and Diversity office, as well as our Student Ombud services. So as a student, life kind of collides with classes, and sometimes very often. And so these are great resources for you to keep in mind if you find yourself in that situation. And so if you are not quite sure what the Student Ombud services do, I would encourage you to go check out their website. They have a lot of information there. They do a variety of different things. And the OIED office actually offers a lot of really cool workshops and things like that too. So I'd encourage you to check that out. And those are some things that you can do to continue getting involved in the NC State community, in addition to just getting to grow your knowledge about people that might be different. And when you come to college, one of the things that I absolutely loved about coming to State was that I got to meet different people and get to hang out with a lot of different friends and really grow relationships that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do in high school. So I would definitely encourage you to check out both of those resources.
Yeah, and I'd love to give a shout out to our campus community centers. They're really great. We have a multicultural center, African American cultural center, LGBTQ center, women's center. So just feel free to go and check them out, even if you don't. We all have different intersectionalities, so feel free to check anything out that's of interest. They're always doing workshops. Everyone's included, so feel free to stop by.
Yeah, absolutely. And their offices are incredibly friendly. So even if you just want to go get some more information about what they do, they would be happy to talk with you.
Definitely.
All right, so one big thing that I do want us to think about when we look at our syllabus, because I think this is one of, again, going back to those underutilized resources, we talked about office hours, looking at your learning outcomes or learning objectives in your course syllabi is really a checklist for what you're expected to know from the course. So if you are trying to figure out an idea of what am I supposed to get out of this class, what am I going to be learning, how am I going to be applying it, looking at your learning outcomes or your learning objectives is a great way to get started with that. So I included just a section of one of these. There were many on this, and typically you'll see many more in your syllabus, maybe 7 or 8 different outcomes. And they could be kind of short, or they could expand on the different things. So with this first one, we have a different kind of a step-by-step list of everything that is to be covered for that specific objective. So here we've got, your reasoning quantitatively for chemical problems and systems. That's a lot of big fancy words. So what does that mean? So that could mean solving basic stoichiometry problems for different substances or reactions, writing out balanced chemical equations, with 4 different types of equations here. What are those? You may not know right at the very beginning of the semester, and that's okay. But you can always come back to the learning objectives, and that can be your checklist of, have I understood what I've been learning in lecture, so that I can make sure that I can actually demonstrate that knowledge when it comes exam time. So we've got these different objectives here. And then the thing that I think is really cool about learning outcomes is that can actually help us go ahead and get started on our study guides and help us start preparing for those exams. Even if it's a little early, I know it's just the first week of classes, but sometimes it can be really easy to fall behind. And so looking at these different study guides, looking at your different learning objectives can help you stay organized with what material you're looking at. So I did kind of a breakdown here with that first learning objective. Took down our first part, so solving basic stoichiometry problems for substances and reactions. And one thing you need to know in order to do that objective is to actually be able to balance an equation. So I have made a mock example here where that came from homework number 2. So that was our second homework assignment. Problems 3, 4, and 7 covered that. So I know that if I can do those problems, I can know how to balance a chemical equation. So I can check that off, that I have met that particular learning objective.
Smart. I never knew about it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Same thing with conversion units. So here I used a mock example of homework number 1, questions 4 through 8. And then I also needed to know how to calculate a molar mass of a compound. Included some examples here. Notice that one of those is top hat questions. So that was an in-class example that we might have done. And this can vary depending on where you are in the semester, but this is something that you can continually add to. And guess what? Then you've done a lot of your study guide making for finals. If you've been doing this throughout the whole semester, you just need to use those outlines to help you prioritize your studying, so that can help you keep track of things, so that when it comes to final exams, you can just focus on the ones that you are particularly struggling with. You can kind of highlight those particular areas and focus on studying those. So this is a really great way for you to kind of stay organized with things, and also help you get an idea of what questions you particularly have, help you narrow down what you know, what you don't know, so that when you're coming to resources for additional help, you can really pinpoint those specific exercises and get targeted help there. So I did do it for another example as well. And then this last one on part A, it would be an example of maybe something that you need to have memorized for a class. So in Chem 101, your diatomic elements, maybe some different chemical symbols or names of elements, or even your polyatomic ions. Those different things you really have to be familiar with because you need to be able to apply them to a variety of different problems. And so maybe there's something from your class notes that you need to make sure that you've got memorized, or that you have on hand that you can easily access. And so making flashcards or using other study tools. I know Quizlet can be really beneficial. And one of the things I really like about that too is on your phone when you're waiting on the bus or waiting for the bus to show up, or just kind of sitting before class starts, you can be reviewing your flashcards, and that can help you make sure that those are staying fresh so that you can apply those when working on problems. That can be really helpful if you're taking a language class this semester too. So we've got another example here with just writing out balanced equations. So one thing I noted here is I needed to know the different types of reactions. So let's say at this point in the semester, we've really only covered combustion and precipitation. I can include definitions there. I could write a reference as to where I can find that information in either my textbook or my class notes. And then I also need to know the different oxidation states of elements. So maybe there are some trends in the periodic table that help me identify those oxidation states, so I can write down that information too. So this is a really, really great way for you to go ahead and start creating study guides for yourself, and make sure that you're still keeping up with the material that you're learning in lecture. One of the things with college classes, especially if it's your first semester at state or second semester at state, the classes that you're learning are going to be presenting new material that you may not understand right away. And so creating these study guides can be really beneficial to give you more experience with that material, more interaction with that material, and help you actually end up retaining that information, which is going to be beneficial because in a lot of the classes you take, that material is going to build on itself. So making sure that you have a solid foundation helps you set yourself up for success later in the semester. All right. Then we kind of get back into some important date information. So at the beginning of the semester, that was kind of more so with the housekeeping type dates. These are going to be starting your exam dates. So your cumulative final exam. This one has the information for both sections that Dr. Martin taught last semester. It's got information about how much the final is worth for your grade, which is important for you to know if you have like a particular goal for a class. You can go ahead and start aiming for that. So that has information about how long it's going to be, where it's going to be. Usually the syllabus will also include information about where it's located. So especially if it's not in your normal classroom, there will be information posted there. And then we hinted at this earlier, but the libraries will actually be changing their schedule when it comes final exam time.
Yeah, so currently we are 24 hours a day, Monday through Sunday through Thursday. Close a little bit earlier on Friday and Saturday at the moment. The only thing you need to know is after 10 p.m. just bring your ID so that we can scan you in. We just do that for safety measures overnight. And then we'll be 24/7 during final exams, so you can come in at any time of the night. I know I was definitely one who liked to get away from my roommates kind of late and just find some really quiet time in the library. That's where I got a lot of my studying done. And in my younger days, I could stay until 2 in the morning and wake up at 8:30 and it'd be no problem. I don't know if I could do that anymore, but when you're younger, it's no problem. And it's a really great time to just be in this big building. It's really quiet. The internet, there's not as many people, so you can get on the internet really easy. And yeah, it's just great.
Yeah, I also really liked it because if you've got roommates or anything, sometimes you have to keep the either apartment or room space dark, and if you come to the library, there's lots of light just to kind of help you stay awake and get in that focus mindset. So yeah,
and if you're ever doing like an interview, we have quiet study rooms, individual study rooms that you can hook up and be a little more professional. Say if your roommate has a bunch of tapestries and just cats in the background moving, you don't have to worry about any of that. It'll be quiet and you can do that. Or even if you have office hours with your professor, it can be a good time to just have that one-on-one moment with them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and then here we have information about the semester tests. So this is super, super important information. So if you haven't gone through your syllabi for each of your classes and written out all your test dates yet, or put those in a Google Calendar, wherever you're going to be able to keep track of all that information, do so now. It is super important for you to go ahead and just lay all that out for all your different classes. If you have a class where instead of tests, maybe it's more project or paper based, or different different kind of end goals for units or things like that, write down those important test dates. Some syllabi may also have important dates about when homework is due, things like that. So I'd encourage you to write all that out and find a system that works for you. For some folks, it's writing it all out in a paper planner. I know I'm kind of one of those people when it comes to some of my like personal stuff, love having it out on a written paper. When it comes to my work stuff, Google Calendar is what I live off of.
Same here.
And so figuring out kind of what system works for you. So as NC State, we are a Google campus, so you guys all have access to kind of the Google workspace. And several of you probably have already gotten used to kind of checking your emails, using your Gmail account there. Through Gmail, you also have access to Google Drive, which includes Google Calendar, and a lot of different apps there too. And our Office of Information Technology actually offers workshops on how to use Google Workspace too. So if you're ever curious, cool. If you're ever curious about how to do that, or maybe if you're super familiar with it, they've got kind of some workshops on even more detailed skills, or if you're brand new to it, just kind of some basics so that you can use it for whatever your best workflow is. But whatever system works best for you, whether it's on a whiteboard, sticky notes, whatever works best for you, make sure that you've got all that date information down. And I would encourage you to write it down either on a monthly basis or for the whole semester, because the worst feeling is realizing you've got a week coming up where you've got 3 exams and 2 projects due and a paper on top of it.
Yep.
Worst feeling.
Yep.
So make sure that you are kind of setting yourself up to recognize that so that you can kind of work ahead to balance that out a little bit better, or just kind of be able to tell your friends like, hey, can't really do anything this week because I'm slammed with all these different things going on. So going ahead and looking at all your syllabi and getting that information down now helps to make sure that you can avoid that feeling later on in the semester.
I think that's such a great point, because if you write it all out, and unfortunately everyone's midterm is at the middle of the semester, yes. So there's going to be some overlap. There's going to be some weeks where you have 3 midterms or finals, everyone's taking a final. So it's a tough week and it's very stressful. But if you write it all out, like Sarah was saying, and you put it on your calendar, you might find a 3-day break between 2 exams. And you can say, you know what, I'm going to take that first day and not think about school at all. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to just get out of my head. I'm going to go to the gym. And then the next 2 days after that, I can spend studying. But at least I'll have that one day to really take care of myself and my wellness. And that can go so far and really help you, especially if you do that during midterm, so that by the time you get to finals, you're not like on your last whatever piece of energy, last brain cell. Yeah. And a little bit of preparation and planning, especially at the very beginning when you have that energy, goes such a long way.
It really does. Yeah. It really does. And I think sometimes we can underestimate just what that little bit of planning can do.
Definitely.
So would encourage you to take some time this weekend. We got a 3-day weekend coming up. There's no classes on Monday. Would encourage you to find a little bit of time to jot down that information there and kind of be able to start spacing things out. All right. This is also some important information. Now, again, for each class and for each instructor, this policy could look completely different. But that's some important information for you to be familiar with. If for some reason maybe you are sick and do miss an exam, that's something that you want to be sure you're communicating with your instructor about. So there's some information on how to do that, when to do that. If you have a pre-planned event that's going to conflict with a exam, or if you're a student athlete or you have religious obligations, those are things that you want to make sure that you are being communicative about. So there is an option here where you can take the test in advance. Keep in mind that if you don't give yourself time to take the test in advance, then you're missing that opportunity. So make sure that you read kind of the fine print with your syllabus there, so that you know what those missed test policies are, or with any missing homework assignments, which we'll talk about in just a second. Here, we also have a poor semester test policy. So again, with everything going on the last couple of years, sometimes you have a really bad day, and that may just happen to be the day where you take an exam. Or you may have had some other things going on, and you really just haven't been able to prepare for the exam the way you needed to. And so there might be a poor semester test policy in place. Again, with this being just an example, make sure that you're checking each course specifically to find out what that information is. But that's something important to know. So maybe if you have a not great first test, as you're just kind of getting used to the test environment, figuring out what you need to know for the exams and things like that, that's something that you can kind of keep in mind. And also that first test is a really great time to figure out, how did I actually study for this first one? What are some changes I maybe need to make in preparation for my future exams? And the Academic Success Center actually has some really awesome resources on how to do that with your tests. And you can even go through those with a tutor. So you can actually book an appointment to go through a first test to kind of really break down why you missed particular questions and what are some things that you can start putting into place in order to be better prepared for your next exam. So really, really cool opportunity. And I took advantage of those when I was a student. I found them really helpful. It's something I'd never done before. But for Chem 101, actually had taken a look into that, and that was really helpful. And that's some stuff that I even used into my upper level math classes when I took as a senior. So. Yeah,
just general study techniques. It's sometimes you remember talking to somebody about studying and about the course, as opposed to just writing stuff down and just saying it in your head. Even if you say it out loud to yourself, that's one step. But really talking to someone, you'll remember that more when you're taking the test. Like, oh, we had a conversation about this. They said this, and I combated with this, but then we agreed that maybe it was this way to do it. You'll remember that interaction more than you will writing down traditional studying. Yep. And, this is when you're going into office hours really helps, because life happens. You might have a poor test. So if you've built that relationship with your professor, they understand what you're going through, they know a little bit about your story, then they might be a little more reasonable. Again, this is, NC State University, so you don't want to make excuses or, come in unprepared. But they're humans too, so they understand, and you can go talk to them. And if they have a policy, then that's something you can refer to later when you're going, if you're going through a situation, and you can at least get some picture of where you're at and where you need to be for the next test, when you can take advantage of some of the tutoring sessions and Academic Success Center tools. Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing I'll throw in there with that is you can go to office hours to potentially review exams too with your instructor. Yeah. And they're the ones that are writing the exam. So who better to help you kind of understand why you might have missed a question than going to your professor's office hours. Yeah. And then you can kind of explain where your head was at, and they might be able to see, well, I can see why you made that mistake, and maybe that was... And here's how to avoid it in the future. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. All right. Okay. All right. And then here's kind of hinting, going back to late homework policy, or just how homework works in general for your class. So in your kind of freshman, sophomore level classes, or first year, second year classes, you might have more of like an online homework platform that you're using, whether it's WebAssign or Achieve. As you get into your upper level courses, that might look different, where it is more kind of paper homework, where you have books problems assigned from the book. Regardless, I cannot emphasize enough, please use your homework to help you study. Even if it's not something that is necessarily part of your grade, use that as a time to really apply the different things that you're learning in lecture. Because hearing it in lecture is one thing, being able to hear that concept, understand the concept, being able to apply it is a whole other thing. So make sure you're using that to your advantage to try those problems, get really comfortable with applying those different concepts. And so if homework is part of your grade, how much it is will be included in the syllabus. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. We also have information about when the assignments are due. So they could all be due at the same time. Maybe you have 2 or 3 assignments that are due each week. That's important information to kind of keep track of, and you can find that in the syllabus. And then I did touch on the late homework policy a little bit, but that could be different for different instructors, so make sure you're looking at that too.
And you might be able to get an extension request if need be, but there could also be a limit on that. So make sure that you're kind of aware of that information too. All right. And then in some classes, you might be enrolled in what's called a problem session, or sometimes you might hear it called a recitation. And these are really great resources too, to be able to practice the types of problems that you need to be familiar with in the course. So it's a really great opportunity to, again, actually be able to apply the different concepts that you're learning in lecture. For some classes, those are a required part of your course grade. In Chem 101, in our example here, they are a required part of your grade. So this includes a lot of information on how to access the problem session, when to be able to, when to expect to like be on. So if they are taking place virtually, usually they're going to be synchronous. So this is a little bit different than maybe checking in on a recorded lecture, when you can do that in a little bit more free time. With your problem sessions, you're getting active participation points. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to those times, and that you're showing up for the section that you are assigned to. So you can be sure to get your participation points there. All right. This has some information about different other parts of the course grade. So in this case, top hat participation, so in-class attendance. That's important to be aware of, especially if you are in a situation where you're having to attend virtually. Make sure you're aware of what in-class participation looks like if you're having to attend virtually. Whether that's watching the live stream, you may still be expected to complete the top hat questions, even though you're watching the live stream. So make sure you're familiar with that. Make sure you're familiar with whatever policy that might be. Oftentimes there's also information here about what to do if you are out sick, and there's not a virtual option. There's information on how to make up that work. You also might be in a class that has pre-class assignments, or pre-class readings. So make sure you're reading that material to get an idea of what's expected there. For your instructors, they're going to be expecting you to come prepared. Your instructors come prepared to class every day. It's important for you as a student to be coming prepared. So that could be reading the textbook chapter. It could be completing a short pre-class assignment. So make sure you're aware of what those due dates or expectations might be as well. And then this kind of summarizes all those different chunks that we've already talked about. So this is actually a breakdown of your grading, all the different pieces that go into that. Would highly recommend that you take some time when you're writing out all your test dates, that you look at what the breakdown is too. Where you earn the most points should be taking the majority of your time for the class. So make sure that you're kind of divvying that up. So if your exams are going to be worth more, you want to make sure that you're spending time preparing for those exams. And homework can be part of that. But for a lot of students, homework isn't enough to be completely prepared for the exam. So don't be discouraged if you still need more practice after doing your homework. That's normal. That is completely normal for the classes that you're taking. So give yourself time to be able to go back and practice, even go back and rework homework problems, especially problems that you missed, and make sure that you can identify why you missed them so that you can avoid making any of those mistakes on the test, because it's much more low stakes when you're going back and addressing those errors, and you're not getting graded for it, compared to when you take it on the exam and you are getting graded for it, and those are worth a lot of points. So I would encourage you to make sure that you're aware of your grade breakdown too, so that you know what you should focus on for each of your classes.
Yeah, and I just say real quick, a lot of times professors will have like a nice even breakdown, like this one's 1,000 points, and you can see the percentages for each section. And they might be a little slow to update the grade book, but if you have your grades, then you kind of have an idea of where you stand in the class, and then you know where to focus for the rest of the semester. So it's always good to be aware, generally have an idea of where you are in the class and what you need to get that grade, especially if you're still before some of the deadline days when it comes to dropping out of the class or withdrawing. Or if you're just coming up on finals and you know, how hard do you really need to push for that last couple weeks?
Yeah, that can be really helpful, and especially as you're setting goals for what you hope to achieve for the semester, that gives you an idea of what your action steps need to be in order to work towards achieving that goal.
Definitely.
Academic integrity. So pretty much all syllabi will include something here for you guys to make sure that you are familiar with the NC State Code of Student Conduct. What are specific academic integrity violations, specifically for tests or assignments, and kind of what entails with that. So be sure that you are paying attention to that, because we do take the University Honor Pledge very seriously. So make sure that you as a student are taking that seriously as well. And then I'm going to let Alex take over to talk a little bit more so about how does this apply for your writing assignments or projects that you're working on.
Yeah, definitely. So some of your professors, and definitely all of them, will ask you to cite your sources at some point. Some are a little more lenient in how you go about that. Some are very strict about how they want you to cite their sources. So if you have any questions at all, you can always come into the library. There's usually a librarian at the Ask Us desk, and we can set up a consultation one-on-one with you. Or you can go to the Writing Center at the Academic Success Center, and we can all help you out when it comes to citing your sources. There's great little tricks, too, that you might not be aware of. When you're searching for articles in our library's database, there's a way for you to send yourself at least a version of a citation, whether it's MLA or APA format, and that way you have the base of what you need. Your professor might require more or different grammatical things, because it's just like it fills it out for you. So you might need to change a little bit, but at least you have like a base to go off of, because nothing's worse than when you finish your 10-page paper and then you have to go back and write 23 references that you use for that 10-page paper, as opposed to doing it as you go along and having at least an idea of where you're going with it. But again, if all of this is sounding overwhelming, come in, set up a one-on-one, and we will help you out, whether it's with the ASC or with librarians here. All of us can help you with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember using libraries, too, when I was a student, because I didn't have to write a ton of research papers in high school.
Yeah, definitely.
And so having to do a very thorough research paper for English 101 was kind of new for me. And that was overwhelming. Like, how do you figure out what resources are good resources to use and things like that?
Definitely.
So is that something I can talk to a librarian about? Yeah,
and the first thing we're going to let you know about is that you have access to a bunch of scholarly articles, millions of them, actually, through our website and through with your Unity Wolfpack ID. So, and this comes out of your tuition. So you're paying for these resources. These scholarly sources, they're all peer-reviewed. These professors take a long time with their research. And so they're not just readily available online. You can find some through Google Scholar, but you're not going to have everything. And we have a lot more access to these databases. We call them like warehouses of databases, where it's from psychology to engineering to education, communication. You're going to find these scholarly sources. So even just accessing those can be a barrier and a challenge. And the better your sources are, what I like to say is the better your sources are, the better your paper is going to be, because you can pull from those sources, use it to make your own point. And the stronger your sources are, the stronger your paper is going to be. So this is a really big skill, and especially if you're thinking about grad school, you're going to be doing this all the time. So it's great to build a foundation, and it's a skill. So it takes time to build. It might not make sense the first couple papers, but it will get easier throughout your career. And if you can build that strong foundation, you'll be really set to go in the future.
Yep. I remember when working on my thesis for graduate school. That was very intimidating.
I went to business school, so we also didn't write a lot of research papers. And when I went to grad school, it was all research papers. And that's when I really, really understood like accessing databases and reading through academic articles, which is really difficult, but is also a skill that you learn to get better at. And it's, so what we like to say is these papers are done by experts for other experts in the field, and you might not be an expert yet, but you're on your way. That's why you're doing your courses in college. You're becoming an expert in your field, so they're going to treat you like that, and they might be a little confusing at first, but you will understand the academic jargon and these words that they use, as opposed to more like layman terms, English or a novel. You can balance that out with a novel that you check out from the library to read like normal people.
Yeah, and that could actually be another plug for office hours too, that as you're reading through those different papers and you're just having a lot of trouble kind of deciphering what's being said, working with your instructor or scheduling an appointment with a writing consultant or librarian, that's a really good way to kind of talk it out too and talk through some of those ideas.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, and then we're kind of getting into one of my favorite parts of the syllabus, where we get to talk about what are some additional resources that are a bit available. So we've kind of been talking about this throughout our whole time, where NC State really does provide a lot of resources to help you guys be successful in the courses. And so in this case, for Chem 101, there was an extra ebook here that has some interactive exercises in it. So if you've got an online textbook, would highly encourage you to see, is it a PDF copy of the textbook, which can be really beneficial because that's got some worked out examples that you can go through and kind of navigate, make sure you understand what each step is doing. But then there can also be some interactive ebooks that have exercises that you can actually go and practice. And those can be really helpful additional support in addition to working your homework problems, because it gives you additional problems to see if you can actually apply the concepts that you're learning in lecture. And then here, Dr. Martin does this really cool thing where he's got a student help forum. And I've seen a couple of other classes do this as well, where if you've got questions about content, whether it's working math problems, physics problems, chemistry problems, or if you have a discussion forum about different topics that you're discussing in more of a seminar type class, that student help forum can be really, really beneficial because it gives you a chance to connect with your peers in the class. And so being able to talk through different questions, talk through and share the knowledge that you have, and then be able to collect the knowledge from other students in your class is an awesome way to get some additional help, especially if your instructor may not be available. So if you're working on homework problems 10 o'clock at night and you're not going to hear from your instructor until the next business day or two, using that student help forum can be really beneficial, because chances are there are other students in your class that are probably up at 10 o'clock too, working on that homework assignment. And then the chemistry department, along with several other departments across campus, have their own walk-in centers too. So the Academic Success Center actually isn't the only tutoring center or the only center that provides tutoring here at State. So a lot of other departments and campus partners provide tutoring support too. So you've got lots of different options to include so that you can pick and choose, do kind of a hodgepodge of all of them, or find one that works best for you or your schedule. So there's information here about what those hours are and their website, that contact information, so you can go check out all of that. And then we also have some information here about some of the other resources that the Academic Success Center provides. So Supplemental Instruction, or SI, is a program that we partner, where we partner with large lecture classes. So this semester we're actually offering it for Chem 101, Chem 201, Chem 221, 223, and Physics 205 this semester. So we're providing it for a lot of different classes. And then with SI, you're actually getting a chance to work through different activities. So you're really practicing and reinforcing those different concepts that you're learning in lecture. And you're working with peers in your class again. So it's a great way to get to know other folks in the classes that you're taking. So if you're new to campus, would highly encourage you to try to start taking advantage of some of those too, because that's a really great way for you to get to meet new friends. And then in addition to that, the Academic Success Center provides a lot of other resources. And all of these resources are free. You do not have to pay for them.
Can you say that again?
All of these resources are free. So you can take advantage of them. We have drop-in tutoring for math, chemistry, and physics. That's starting next week. Super excited for that. We have weekly group tutoring where you can, if you want to be able to meet with a smaller group, so like 3 to 5 students in the class. If you've got some friends in the class and you're all kind of wanting to be able to study together and meet with a tutor, you guys can apply together. That request form actually went live on Wednesday, so you can go ahead and apply for a group tutor. We have our academic peer mentoring, which is a newer program for the Academic Success Center and one that we absolutely love. Peer mentoring is not course specific. You're focusing on academic success skills, so note taking, time organization, just staying organized with your resources in general, test taking strategies, reviewing what to do after you take a test. A lot of different academic skill resources that you can use and apply to any of your courses. So if you are kind of new to the college world and just kind of getting used to how do I handle all this information that I have, the Academic Peer Mentoring Program can be a great way for you to get connected and start practicing some of those different skills. And then we also have our one-on-one tutoring by appointment. So we offer one-on-one tutoring for a lot of different courses. So we support several 100 and 200 level math, chemistry, and physics, as well as some biology, accounting, and economics courses. So you can go check out our website for specific information on what types of courses we're offering support for each semester. And then we have instructor's office hours mentioned here again. That information was up at the top of the syllabus, but again, we see here that if you're not able to make those specific times, you can email your instructor to find an appointment time that works for both of your schedules. So don't be discouraged if you're looking at office hour times and they don't look like they're going to work within your schedule. You can email your instructor and try to find an appointment time that works best for both of you.
Definitely, and that supplemental instruction is so great because Chem 101, physics, economics, they can be classes that are make or break, where you might not be into chemistry, but you have to take it to get to your more specific major classes.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling getting that supplemental instruction just to get by that class so you can move on to the rest of your major can be super, super important. So definitely take advantage. Like Sarah was saying, it's free. You can get that peer mentoring. A lot of students are having a tough time connecting with other people during this pandemic. So that one-on-one peer mentoring can be one of the ways that you feel connected to the campus, to other students, and you'll probably make a friend out of it, and maybe a mentor going forward.
Yep, for sure. And then Dr. Martin includes different tips on test taking and learning strategies, which I think is great. Not all of your instructors may include that information, but if you've got an instructor that's including tips on how to take exams, make sure you read them. That's really, really helpful, and some ways that you can go ahead and start getting that information. And start making a plan moving forward. So going ahead and getting to know folks to make study groups, writing out summary sheets so that you know the information that you've got to know. So that kind of ties into your learning objectives that we talked about earlier and making study guides there. After you've worked your really hard problem out, see if you can explain it to yourself, like what you actually did and why you took the steps that you took in order to solve it. So a lot of different things there. So your instructor might include some other links to just different general study tips for being successful in college, which if you are a transfer student or newer student on campus where it's your first or second semester, or maybe you've changed majors and you're taking newer classes and you've got to kind of change your study habits a little bit, looking at those different resources can be really beneficial. And we have the Academic Success Center has a lot of academic skill resources to kind of give you some new ideas with things if you need to kind of change up study habits that worked for you in the past but may not be working as beneficially now in your college classes. And then typically towards the end of your syllabus, you might have a lecture schedule. These are the different topics that you're covering. So these are really great ways to add to your study guide. And this also tells you what types of material or what specific material or concepts you're going to be tested on for your exams. So this is very, very important. So here I just listed the first unit, and you see that in test 1, we have the different chapters it's going to cover, and I love this, the homework that you're going to be expected to be familiar with come test time. So you can check that out, make sure that you're staying on top of it, and it's got the homework due date, so you can make sure that you're keeping track of that. You can put those in your Google Calendar too and list those as events so that you can keep track of that information, as well as any holidays where you may not have any class, or those important dates kind of laid out on a calendar for you too. So very, very helpful to take a look at that. What did it again?
Oh, no. That one was quick because we just came to this.
Yes.
We will be right back. We hope you're enjoying us break down a syllabus. And just make sure you stop by the library. The Academic Success Center is starting sessions on Tuesday, the Tuesday we get back from the 3-day holiday. There's going to be supplemental instruction this semester. There's one-on-one tutoring. There's peer mentoring. So many resources that you have available. And we're trying to be as safe as possible. We're following all the Protect the Pack procedures, keeping things clean and sanitized. So you should feel comfortable to come in. If not, we can always set up a Zoom consultation with you as well.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things with the one-on-one appointments or any of your writing appointments, you have the option to either choose a in-person or virtual appointment.
Very cool.
So, and you can actually do that through the app. You can schedule those appointments or the one-on-one appointments with our non-writing appointments. You can schedule those through the GPS Navigate app, which is super cool.
Nice.
And then with writing, you can go to our website and check out a link to schedule your appointments there. So. Cool deal. So we have our, talked about our lecture schedule and just kind of the rundown of the important dates. This is also really helpful for any of my maybe type A people who really like kind of knowing ahead of the game. You can go ahead and have your whole schedule posted out there. So that gives you a heads up on ways that maybe you can get ahead if you know you've got a busy week coming up, sections that you can read before you go to class so that it's not the first time you're seeing that material. There are several different ways that you can utilize that the lecture schedule to kind of help you stay on top of course material. All right. And then did we want to run down through spaces real quick?
We can do that real quick. Before we move on to the library, I just want to say thank you for breaking down the syllabus and just to really use it as a tool. It's kind of like a treasure map. You can lay out the whole semester. You can find out some little tricky things that the professor might have in store for in terms of like what are we going to cover on this day in class, what homework assignment, what project is going to be due. You can really map all of that out. My colleague Ann sent me this really great message where a professor at the end of a syllabus had put a locker code and said there's $50 in this locker for the first person who goes. And at the end of the semester, he went in, and the $50 was still there because nobody read that far into the syllabus. So at the beginning of the semester, when you have that energy, just go through the whole syllabus. Make sure you understand all the different policies, when to drop, when to not drop, when to withdraw, what textbooks you might need, when you might need those textbooks by. Are you required to know some knowledge before the class even starts? There's just so much information in that packet that you get a week before class, 2 weeks before class, sometimes the day of class, that you can really help you out throughout the rest of your semester. And it's just such a powerful tool if you get to understand how to break it down. And we can help you out with that as well if you want to come in and go through your syllabus with us.
Yeah, I actually have my own personal story about syllabus. So I had an instructor in a 200 level math class. At the very end of the syllabus, we had to send him an email saying that we had read through the whole thing and got 5 points.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I will say,
yeah,
there's a lot of valuable information in it.
Definitely.
Just in general, but sometimes you might have an instructor that gives you a little bit of an incentive.
Yeah. And these are like, these stories happen every so often.
Yes.
But the moral behind the story is that these are important documents to really read through. I had a professor who would hark on, and he even put this on the syllabus. When you get a test, read through the whole test before you start.
Yeah.
And during his first cheeky test, at the end, he said, "Hey, if you read this far, you can just turn in the test, and I'll give you, I'll give you an 88% if you don't want to take the test." And so, you see some students get up in 5 minutes, and you're like, "Oh, they must not understand any of the material." And then you do the whole test and do less than an 88, and the professor's like, "Well, I offered you this option." And that doesn't happen all the time, but like I said, the moral behind the story is to really try to read through it, understand it, ask questions about it. And then I think one of the biggest lessons of today is really take advantage of those office hours as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Get to know your professors. Let them put a name to the face, a face to the name, especially in those really big classes like Chem 101. Yeah. So the libraries, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about our resources. The DHL Junior Library is where we are right now. It's kind of your more traditional library. It's been here forever. It's a bunch of different buildings stitched together. And while it might look a little old-fashioned on the outside, it's really remodeled on the inside.
Yeah,
it's really beautiful. We have a coffee shop inside. The atrium is next door where you can get some food, get some snacks, get some carbs. And then come back and study, get some ice cream. And we just have so many resources. We have an innovation studio. We have a maker space. I'll talk about some of the spaces in a second. And then the more modern library, of course, is on Centennial Campus. It's James B. Hunt Junior Library. It's won a bunch of awards for its design. It's a little bit less, there's a little bit less traffic depending on the day, but you can usually find a nice quiet area. And then there's so much natural light and just beautiful areas. That library is also open 24 hours a day, 5 days a week for now, and then during finals it'll be 24/7. And then we also have some more specific libraries. So we have the Natural Resources Library, Design Library, Vet Medicine Library. You don't have to be in these colleges to go to these libraries, but they're going to have materials more specific to that subject. Their hours are a little different. You can just check on their website, and you'll be able to find all that information out. But yeah, if you're in Vet Med, Design, or Natural Resources, we have materials specifically for you in those libraries. And then in our DHL library, we have a maker space. 3D printing is free this year, so you can print a bunch of different things for your class or for your personal hobbies, or if you just want to learn how to use it. It's going to be a great tool. There's going to be a lot of jobs in that area in the future. One of my favorite stories about the makerspace is a professor of engineering asked their class to make something cheap, something easy, simple enough, but something that they could use daily. And a group of students made a peanut butter jar that incorporated like deodorant technology. So at the bottom, when you got lower in your peanut butter, the bottom you would turn like a little style and it would come up, so that way your hands didn't get filled with peanut butter and you could really get to the bottom of that jar.
Love that.
And I think they patented that and like won like a contest or something with that.
Love that.
Even if you just want to make cosplay pendants or Pokemon, you can do that as well. Chess pieces, so many different things you can do. And it's not just for 3D printing. We have embroidery, we have engraving machines. You can do a whole bunch of different things, vinyl cutting. So many really cool things. You just take a safety orientation online, and then you can use the space at your own leisure for the rest of your career here at NC State. We also have a virtual reality lab. Again, not just for gaming. There's going to be marketing apps, design apps, architecture, marketing when you're selling a car. How about you come and sit in the car, especially now with COVID. If you can see the car, drive the car, but not have to leave the comfort of your own home or school, then that's super, super amazing. You can learn how to program in using those engines. We also have a digital media lab where you can use all of our Adobe softwares, Logic, iMovie, anything creative. We have those softwares, or we can get you access to those softwares. We also have a lot of tech in there. You can record a podcast. There's a green screen room. So many different things that you can do in that space. We have classic learning commons, quiet study rooms, group study rooms. You can reserve those spaces. They do get a little busy, especially around midterms and finals. But you can reserve rooms about a week in advance. So just, visit our website. It's a tab on the top that says reserve a room or find a place to study, and you will be able to do that.
Sounds good.
We have a bunch of stuff for tech lending, not just chargers and laptops. We do have those. We have 8-hour laptop rentals, Mac, PC. You can email library_techlending@ncsu.edu, and you can see if you can check out a laptop for a longer term. But we also have graphing calculators if you have a test. Again, if you do have a test, so does everybody else that day, so it can get a little busy, and we can run low on inventory sometimes, but we generally have a lot of graphing calculators. Audio production equipment like recorders. We have DSLR cameras, video cameras, GoPros, and more. And you can look online and you can request these straight from online. We have really great collections, both in print. We have them on in our stacks. We have access to online databases, journals, articles. We spend millions and millions of dollars every year improving our collection. And this is all yours to access for free. You can check them out at the libraries or online. So again, lib.ncsu.edu, our homepage, is going to be your one-stop shop for everything. You can find out about workshops, you can find articles, you can find books. You can see how long you can check out those books for. So definitely check out and get familiar with our website so you can access all of our collections. And yeah, that's basically what I just said. You'll learn to use this website. On the top, you'll see the search bar. You also see all the different tabs. If you want to do a data and viz session, if you want to do media making, research and teaching, study and learn, I believe that's where you can find reserve a room. Find and borrows, tech lending, spaces, reserve a room. It's also accessible right there. Under the all search tab, you're going to find articles, you're going to find books, you're going to find media. If you go to the articles tab, you're just going to find articles, so it'll take you to our databases. And our databases work kind of like we have the Amazon warehouse of databases, where you're going to find articles from everywhere from psychology to engineering. And then we have the more niche independent stores where you can find articles just on psychology if you need specific articles just on that topic. So definitely get familiar with that. And like we were mentioning earlier, if you have any questions about how to access these articles, because they can be difficult to get to, just set up a consultation or come into the Writing Center and we will be able to point you in the right direction. And you can always come to the Ask Us desk to ask questions. You can walk up. We always have a service manager that can hook you up with the right person, set you up with a specialist librarian, research and research engagement. They have librarians for each subject. You can email us. You can call us. You can walk up and chat. We are accessible. If you have a question from your dorm room, just send us a chat and we'll get back to you right away. Even if it's just, hey, do you have any DSLR cameras at the moment? Yes, we can check that out.
Perfect. All right. And then I just wanted to wrap up with kind of including a link to our website. So a lot of information is located on our website, and it's easy to remember. We're go.ncsu.edu/ASC. And we have information on all of our different programs there. Any of our programs like academic peer mentoring or group tutoring, where you do need to fill out an application to request a peer mentor or a group tutor so that we can assign you to someone that will work within your schedule. All that information on how to fill out those applications, where are they, is posted there on our website. And then a fun thing that was new as of December is the ASC is actually on Instagram now. So I did want to mention that. This is a great way to get connected with the ASC, learn more about our programs and services, get to know some of the tutors that work in our different services, as well as just stay up to date with important information, days where we may not have any services, where there's a change in schedule, different things like that. So we're very excited about that, and you can give us a follow at NC State ASC. And then also just wanted to mention some of the other things that we have available on our website. So not only do we have all that information about our programs and services, but we also have several different handouts and links to other resources to get some help. So if you go to our resources tab on our homepage, you can find materials that you can actually access at any time. So there's the academic skill resources. So those were those handouts I was talking about earlier with study traps to avoid, ways to kind of keep yourself organized, how to read a textbook, improving your concentration, what are active study skills, and how that can be beneficial to you as you are preparing for exams. How to utilize office hours, how to build some time management skills, lots of different things. And then we also have a great writing and research resources kind of database on our website. Has a lot of information about different citations that you can look at, just how to get started with writing a research paper, or several other different genres that you can focus on too. There's even some really cool information about resumes and cover letters there. So if you're filling out applications for internships coming up or grad school applications, there's a lot of information there for you. So I encourage you to check that out. And then, of course, we also link to other resources that are available on campus. So I've already mentioned that the Academic Success Center is not the only tutoring center or the only space that provides tutoring. So some of those more specialized courses, some of your upper-level engineering coursework, foreign language tutoring, things like that, we've got links to access those different departments posted on our website. So it's a really great way to, if you can't find it on the ASC website, great way to go find out what are other departments doing, as well as other academic resources in general just here at NC State. So really great website just to kind of find out general information. So if you don't have it bookmarked yet, would highly recommend. So bookmark the ASC website and the library website, and that covers a lot.
There's a lot of help there, and it can feel difficult to feel connected this year, but coming into the ASC, coming into the library, I think is a great way to feel like you're part of the school, part of the community,
Absolutely.
and get those resources that are so beneficial.
And get to take advantage of the newly renovated DHL Junior Library, too, and
true.
get to see those new spaces. So... and then just wanted to briefly mention study buddies too. So Alex mentioned, it can be challenging to feel connected to campus. Study buddies is another really great way to get to meet people in your classes and actually form study groups. So if you have your GPS mobile app, you can click on the Study Buddies feature, and that actually gets you connected with any other students in your class that mentioned they wanted to meet up and form study groups too. So it's a really great way to get connected with your other friends in your classes, other peers in your classes. And that's also a really great way to get help if you're having trouble finding support for a course. So if you have a course that you're not seeing much help listed through the department or through another area on campus, using the Studies Buddy feature can be really beneficial there. All right. And then just wrapping up, we wanted to kind of challenge you guys to think of a few different things that we've talked about. We know we've talked about a lot of different resources. So I'd encourage you to kind of think through what are, some pieces of tech that you can take advantage of with the libraries, 3 resources at the ASC that you can utilize, and go ahead and think about what are some of the different ideas from our presentation today, whether it's using your syllabus, whether it's building a study guide, whether it's booking a consultation so you can get started on a research paper. What are some of those things that you can go ahead and plan on putting into practice over the next couple of weeks as you're getting into the flow of starting out the semester? And then I think we've got a few minutes left that if we have any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat or,
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. I would say 2 ideas. One would be breaking down the syllabus and making the course objectives into a study guide. That was something I'd never even thought of, but it lended itself so well to all right, this is learning objective 1, 2, and 3 that are going to be covered on exam number 1. Let me break down the homework assignments that go with each individual learning objective, and then you're already halfway there with your study guide. And that's just such a great idea and genius that I never even thought about.
Yeah, I definitely learned more about the makerspace. That's something that I'd like to check out.
Yeah, and I want to say about the makerspace, you don't have to be in engineering. You can be in communications, and you can still use the makerspace. It's not just for academics, though you can use it for your project for sure. But you can do it for your hobbies and whatever you want to try it. And if you've never done one before, there's a lot of pre-made programs that you can just I want to do a penguin, and you'll have a bunch of different penguins to choose from, and then you can print it, and then that could be your first step. You're dipping your toe into 3D printing. I really want to take the embroidery workshop so I can get some blank hoodies and kind of embroider my own custom designs. I think that'd be really fun. And, they have workshops on a lot of these things too.
Okay.
So it's you can learn with other people. And if you're a little introverted and you just, rather learn in a group setting, then you can do that. It's not as intimidating, for sure. And then another thing that I wanted to say is you were mentioning earlier, there's so many ways to participate in class, not just the traditional speaking up in front of the classes. in the classroom, which can be terrifying to someone who is more introverted.
Yeah.
But if you have your clicker, if you're doing the daily quizzes before class, or just even saying like I'm here and checking in, that can get you that 10% that you need to really boost your grade and make sure that you don't miss out on that, which can be tough. We have Makerspace Orientation is available online in the chat. Yeah, so go check those out. Any last words from the ASC?
I'm just going to go back to, like, if you do have a question or just kind of trouble getting connected with a class, even if you feel like you're not necessarily struggling in the class yet, you can go ahead and reach out to schedule an appointment with a tutor, go visit an SI session, go to drop-in. Actually, last semester, a lot of students went to drop-in, and that's where they worked on homework. And then if they had a question come up, they were able to ask a tutor. So really great way to kind of use that without kind of waiting to the panic point. So can kind of want to break that myth that you do not have to be struggling in a class in order to request a tutor or get help. That can be a really great way for you to actually kind of check your own understanding and make sure that you have it down. And then also just wanted to kind of give a shout out to our other partners in the ASC space. So we have drop-in advising happening every day throughout the week. We also have wellness coaches from Wellness and Recreation. And then we have career drop-in as well. So definitely a lot of resources for you to be able to take advantage of, and all the information for those different partners are posted on our website. So definitely stop by. We'd love to see you.
Definitely. Is this the last slide? Cool.
Yep.
So go ahead. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. Good luck with your semester. Yes. We wish you the best, and we are here for you if you ever need us. You guys have a great 3-day weekend.
Yes.
And thank you.